obviously a lot in doing this.
Literally today,
I don't have anything.
I worked for 4 hours, and most of it was done through ChatGPT. And then
Yeah.
like literally ChatGPT did my job today, like 50%.
Don't tell people that. I'll be out of a job.
Did you find my phone?
No, I just killed the device.
Oh, you just paused on the
Yeah,
home
yeah.
screen.
I will say that ChatGPT was not very useful for this problem because it's extremely specific and like deals with a bunch of intersecting technologies and like you can't really. It's not something that would be available really. Oh, I mean it is available on the internet, but I think it's just not mentioned widely enough to be of any interest.
Real quick for the new people, who are you?
Yeah, okay, I'm Sky. Right now work as a developer for a company called Yori Corporation. We do AR products, VR products, and we also do a little bit of web development, so that's what this is. This is the Creative Portland website. We are maintaining the website and also maintaining their app. They have an iOS app you can all download if you'd like. That has an AR feature that has not quite been released. It will be releasing that very soon. That I built. It's very neat. So I very much encourage you to check it out if you get the opportunity. But this is the website, and this website is built with a technology called Next.js. And just show of hands, who's heard of Next.js? Okay, so about half of you, yeah. I hadn't really heard of it until we started working on this project. It was released, I think, in 2016, so it's about 7 years old. It's a framework for building websites and web apps using React. And it's quite popular. A lot of people use it. It's used by, like, I don't know, New York Times and Wall Street Journal and who knows who else. Big names, big websites, important people. And it's also used by a lot of small hobbyists because you can deploy it very easily, and it gives you a lot of tools to very quickly and effectively set up a website that has a lot of different functions. So we use Next.js. I didn't actually set up the website. I sort of came along later to maintain it. And after I fixed some of the like minor things like, oh, this button doesn't work or the form doesn't submit correctly, we got to the point where we started looking at performance, and the website still isn't particularly performant. You can measure this stuff with Google Lighthouse or other web development performance measuring sites or tools, and we did and still do come in as a fail. But we're a little bit less faily now than we used to be, and really a lot of the times the issues with, well, not always, but diagnosing a problem can be just as important as fixing it, and the trouble here was diagnosing it. So got a solution, just haven't implemented it yet. So one of the major components of slow performance is you can sort of come to this network tab here in Chrome if you're ever on a website, and you can take a look at how things load. And I've disabled caching here so we don't get any cached assets. But if you just reload, then you'll see all the different items that are on the website reload, and you can sort of track these by what kind of item they are and how long they take to load. So this is like your basic HTML document. It shouldn't be cached at all. And then the thing that I'd like to focus on, these are GraphQL queries, which take an embarrassingly long time to load. That's the thing I'm going to work on next. But for now, we're going to focus on these, and these are images, like this one right here. So Next.js is something called an image optimizer, and basically what it does is that you have an image stored in our server. We use S3, which is Amazon's basically, what do they call it? Bucket, I think is usually the term. I think it's called single something storage.
Simple storage service.
Simple storage service, thank you, Chris. So it's basically just something you put stuff in. It holds files and whatever other data you need it to hold, but not in a structured way, and please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but it's basically just like a folder, and you can put a bunch of stuff in that folder, and if you need it, then you can access it by accessing S3. So we put the original a photo for this in S3, and then Next.js has something called an image optimizer. So basically what happens here is that when the client queries Next.js, and Next.js says like, oh, you want that image? Okay, well, how large is the space that you're displaying it on your website? And the query will include this information. And it's like, oh, well, it's 100 by 100 pixels. Next.js is like, well, that image is like 1200 by 1200 pixels. So you don't need that image. You need like a much smaller version of that image. So it optimizes the image, basically changes it to a different format, usually WebP, which is marvelously small considering the quality of the images, and also a smaller size, so it'll change it to like a 320 by 320 WebP file, and then it gives it to the client. It says, here is your image. That's a very effective way to do things. But the problem with it is that if every time that the client wants an image, the Next.js server has to run an optimization service, then that slows things down considerably, right? So really we want to store the optimized images somewhere. And the way this works on where, well, you can deploy Next.js to a variety of different places. And so yeah, that's hard to integrate this conversation well with. But the way that where we have it deployed is AWS Amplify. So Amplify is a service, one of the AWS services, and there's two different kinds. One is like through the command line, and one is through the dashboard. And I'm talking about the dashboard one. So the dashboard version supports Next.js and allows you to easily deploy Next.js apps. You take your GitHub repo, you connect it, and then whenever you push any sort of update to the GitHub repo, then Amplify will automatically take that code and it will build and deploy it. Just super convenient, right? Like, okay, we've got the code built, we've tested it, it all works. We've got a staging instance here too.
I was gonna say, do you have like a QA
Yeah.
environment that you can?
Yeah, we've got a staging instance, so we deploy there and then we deploy to main.
What do they do? It's called prod.
And so it's super effective and very easy. And then what Amplify actually does is that it leverages a bunch of other AWS services, specifically one called CloudFront, which is something called a CDN, which is a content delivery network. CloudFront is essentially just a series of servers located in a variety of different places around the world. So if you're in Tokyo and you want to access this website, then you send, you make a request and it gets routed to CloudFront, and CloudFront then routes it to the origin if it needs to, back to the main Amplify server. And if it doesn't, then it just, if it has whatever it needs, then it just sends that back on that. So CloudFront, ideally, the way that this should work is that the client makes a request for the image file. It gets routed to Next.js. Next.js optimizes the file. Next.js sends the file back through CloudFront. CloudFront says, hey, this could be useful later, stores the file. The next time, not only that client, but any other client that's dealing with that CloudFront distribution, so anybody else in Tokyo or Nebraska or wherever your CloudFront distribution is, wants that file, it's already stored on CloudFront. And you can set the way it's specified is they let you do it through, where are the custom headers? Yeah, okay. So you can ignore these aren't necessary, but here, we've got our next image. You can set this cache control value, and this is just like redundancy, but max age. So this is actually this specifies browser caching. So this is how long your browser itself is going to cache the file. But the way that CloudFront is configured, they respect this value. Mm-hmm. So they will theoretically store the file in CloudFront for this long, which is I think a year represented in seconds. Do they actually do that? Probably not, because they probably are like, well, nobody's accessed this file for 264 days, so let's just scrap it. Because they have their own, whatever to worry about. But they will, they'll think about respecting this. They won't get rid of it just off the cuff unless they feel like they have to for whatever efficiency they're driving. So yeah, that's how it should all work, right? Yeah.
Sorry to say, but I think it's common knowledge that those services are based on demand. Like you said, like if the file is in low demand, they're gonna store it for half a day or
Yeah.
a day and then discard it.
Yeah,
You
sure.
can't rely
No.
on that layer to be caching your files for you. Is what I'm trying to say.
No,
That
it's
is
not super
expected.
reliable. But if people are visiting the website consistently, and this website gets about 2,000 to 3,000 visitors a month, so or about 100 visitors a day, then those files should be staying up on CloudFront at least most of the time, right? Especially because almost everybody's accessing the Creative Form website, the same CloudFront distribution, which is whatever was local to our area.
Sorry if you're going to mention this coming up, but like how granular are those images? Like, because it's for different viewports, right? So obviously they're going to store a desktop version, an iPad version, and a mobile version, but
Yeah.
is an iPhone 12 and an iPhone 13 with a different DPI, are they going to have different versions?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way Next.js works is that you can specify the different sizes that you want, and then it will take whatever space you've got, and it will just choose the one that is high enough to fill that, but low enough. So actually, like if you resize your browser window, then you'll end up with it, probably end up with a different image. It'll probably reload it seamlessly to provide you with a different image of a higher quality.
But you're probably storing like 15, you're not storing like 150.
No, yeah, I think the sizes are like 640, 756, 900, 1200, 1800, whatever, like there's like 8 levels of granularity. Good question. You too, Julie. Oh,
Good job, guys.
Brian.
I was gonna ask something about that as well. You say your company does AR as well, right? So have you heard of MIP mapping
No.
in VR? MIP mapping. So in game engines, they do the same thing. When you have like graphics, they store different resolutions of the graphics, so that if you're standing at like different points, you would see different resolutions. So especially in like VR, so if you stand really close, it's high resolution. If you're standing really far, you're not going to see anything. So they store like a low quality version, so they have like all of those. But then the biggest problem is there's a lot of like aliasing issues. So like if you go too quickly towards the image, it will still be grainy, and then it will take like a few seconds before it becomes clear again. I'm sure you've seen that in like game.
Right.
Yeah. So like in this case, that would be like responsiveness. So if I like pull the browser
Very quickly.
size very quickly,
Right.
would that like cause an issue because it would have like a small resolution and then like
Yeah,
immediately-
it's certainly possible. I've never tried experiments of like, loading the browser at a very low, and realistically, in most situations, it's not really, if you're browsing on a phone, you're probably gonna be at phone width. And it's pretty unlikely that somebody's going to be like, here, I will load the website like this, and then I will suddenly pull it out to its full width.
But now I want to be that guy. I'm gonna go and that's the first thing I'm gonna do. On many websites, I'll see how that.
And people
works.
snap it too, right? You'll open it and then you'll throw it over to the left side of your screen and throw
Oh,
the
yeah,
second
like
thing over to the
snap
right
it.
I am a
side.
big snapper.
I'm a huge snapper.
Same. Yeah.
Oh no, what did I do?
The other question is, does it do it for bandwidth? Like, is there an initial image that it
I don't
loads
think
if you
it
have
will
really
reload.
shitty
It's not
Wi-Fi?
gonna reload, I don't think.
Oh,
My
it-
expectation is that once it's loaded, the image is baked in the DOM, and if you move and stretch, it's not gonna do anything, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
The request happens upon loading, like the document says we need this image
Right.
out of the markup, and it's like bringing this image in, and then
Well, yeah,
you
but if-
resize that's CSS at that point. So CSS might say the viewport's width has changed, but I don't think that's gonna trigger another request on the wire necessarily.
I don't know. I mean, if you scroll down a little bit, it triggers a new request. So.
Oh, that point, yeah. If there's like infinite scrolling or something, definitely.
No, it's just not infinite. I mean, just a little bit. You lazy loading of images, right? It's so
Yeah.
like the idea of loading larger images as the viewport gets much larger isn't that. I don't know, but it's not out of scope certainly for modern web framework. Yeah, Jordan?
Do you use anything like full story to see what the users are looking at on your website?
No.
I was hoping you did, so you
No, maybe we should. I mean, so web dev, the Google tool does give you, it both gives you like performance based on like an objective test of like, we queried your actual website and here's the statistics on that. And then it also gives you like, here's statistics that we stole from people, we creepily watched people over the last 30 days visiting your website, and this is what their experiences were.
Okay, so it's
Which
not
might be
kind of like full story.
Somewhat similar, yeah. Also, I should check that out because it's always interesting to get more data on that particular point. The other interesting thing about web development is that it's very murky. Like if you're building a local application, you know, you like write the code, you build the application, you play around with it. Like that's pretty much what it's gonna be. But when you're doing something on the web, like what other people are going to experience, well, they're on a different browser, they're on a different device, you know, they're like whatever different stuff is occurring, it's very difficult to understand.
Ad blocker.
Right, and even if you reload a page, sometimes you'll get a different set of behaviors from the website itself. So like, you know, there's this sort of like unfortunate complexity baked into some of it.
That's why I use Netscape Navigator to
Yeah.
go off the web instead of looking at metrics.
Yeah, exactly.
Who the hell is this guy doing on our website? Do we have to support this now?
Sadly, I think that just gets shifted into the other category.
That's why I only develop for Tor sites. You know the browser already.
We don't want to know what you're developing if you're doing things.
I've heard the Silk Road. This was made out of steel.
The unfortunate thing here is that like that story, that little story I told you about how everything is supposed to work is not how it's working for us. So if we see here, right, when we send a request for these images, and I just reloaded this, so like the first request should have told the CDN, hey, make the image and cache it. And now on a reload, I should be getting that image.
No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but the CDN is not part of your chain. It's an independent organism. It is not part of your development expectations. Like it's a helpful thing, and it's meant to be a cool like layer of lightning things on the web. But you cannot, as a developer, think the CDN is gonna do that for me. Like that's a third-party company. You're not even paying them most of the time. They'll cache when they're nice, in a good mood, and your file is in high demand. They'll cache it.
Okay,
But
well,
yeah. Sorry to take that.
yeah, I've got a metric that very clearly displays whether this is happening or not, so we're just following that, right? There's this little header called xcache right down here, and it says miss from CloudFront, right? And this, if this says hit from CloudFront, then this timing metric we've got right here is gonna be about 30 milliseconds. We're gonna have 0 content download. And if it says miss from CloudFront, then we're gonna have something like this, which indicates to me that either the optimized image is being retrieved from S3, maybe, probably not, or what's actually happening is that the image is being re-optimized on the fly and then served to the website, which is not the ideal behavior. Yes.
Why don't you just do what you've done with the call for art icon and just do an ineligible, just pixelated image, and then it'll be delivered really quickly.
This is not ineligible.
It's just it's like a useless image. Just do more of those, and the delivery will be really
No.
fast.
It's awful.
This is
Test image.
The administrators. Well, we won't get into that.
It's not in scope for the presentation.
Not even close
Hey,
to being
I heard we were
true.
going on LinkedIn, and I was like, let's get this thing off the rails, dude.
Okay, so right, we've got 382 milliseconds, or 32.22 milliseconds of content download. And if we look at our payload, we're delivering a file that is 14.6 kilobytes, which for a WebP file of 384 by 306, and it's actually slightly larger than
Oh,
that.
quick question.
Yeah.
This is your production website?
Yes.
Can you go back to the payload?
Yeah, sure.
Why does that say dev in the URL?
Oh, because the S3 bucket is called dev.
Touche.
We only have one S3 bucket. We don't have multiple S3 buckets.
Also, why is it a screenshot?
Huh?
The image is a screenshot from January 10th at 11:14.
He has no control over the content.
The user uploaded, okay?
The nut to write the presentation.
Let him present. Hey, I've got half a pizza. I can be here all day.
Business analyst.
But if we look at something like events, right, and look at the headers here, if we do things right, then maybe I'll have to reload it a couple times. Oh no, I gotta do it. So if I go to images and then we take one of these, here's the interesting behavior, right? If we open one of these up, so I was very flummoxed by this at the beginning, right? And then I noticed this thing, which is that when you open, on Chrome, if you open a single image in a new tab, it does not treat it in the network tab as an image at all. It treats it as a doc. And for whatever reason, when it treats it as a doc, every single time you get 45 milliseconds, 0.38 milliseconds for download, and you get this holy grail, which is our hit from CloudFront. And Julian, excuse me for saying, but like, you never don't get a hit from CloudFront. Like, it's cached. At least when you're doing your testing for the first 15 minutes or however long, it's not gonna flake out on you. It's gonna give you that image. So, why is this? Like, why is it delivering the thing when it's a doc and not when it's an image? And the truth is, that behavior is a little bit confusing to me as well. I couldn't actually tell you exactly why that is, but I can tell you why the image doesn't get delivered. And it's because when you deploy a Next.js project to Amplify, you're basically just handing off all management of the project, most of the management of the project, the CDN, specifying, and you can customize CloudFront a great deal. And aside from a few customizable things like custom headers, almost all of the actual web services side is handled by Amazon, and you have no control over it. And unfortunately, one of the things that you have no control over is whether or not the caching behavior pays attention to cookies. And that is really bad because we use Google Analytics on our website. And if you look at this Google Analytics cookie right here, you'll see that it's a big, long number, and that ends in 9285.60.0.0. So just remember that, 9285.60.0.0. And this is, which image is this?
What do they mean?
What is this one?
I think it's 9285.
No, it's this little, I don't know, it's this little image, I think I can identify it. So let's reload. So now it loads and it takes a long time, of course, because it's not doing the right thing. And then we go to down here and we get 9442.60.0.0. Because Google Analytics is, I think, probably just keeping track of the seconds or the milliseconds or whatever using this number here. And as a result, it sends a slightly different cookie every time that you load this image. And when it sends a different cookie, because the CloudFront behavior for Amplify, for normal instances on AWS, CloudFront ignores cookies. But for some reason, for Amplify deployments, it pays attention to cookies. And so it says, I've never seen that image before. I don't know what you're giving me. And it says, I have to go back to the origin, I have to optimize this image again, and then I have to serve it to you entirely fresh. And that's, yes.
Does that have anything to do with disabling cache?
Disabling cache, I'm just disabling, so really what this is doing is it's mostly for performance for multiple users, right? It's like, if I visit the website, then I'll get bad performance at first, and then, because my browser will cache most of these assets, I'll get good performance after that.
I see.
But ideally, if somebody else visits 5 minutes after me, they should get the cached image from the CDN, right? And then they'll cache the stuff in their browser too, and then they'll have good performance too. If we go up to this cache control, right? This is specifying how long your browser should store this thing, all else being equal, and that's a year. So you should, every time you visit the site after this, you should have good performance for those images, yeah.
So what you're talking about is serving static assets from the cookieless domain? is what it's called.
Yeah.
That's been happening for like 20 years. Amazon somehow is not serving your images from a cookieless domain. Like it's somehow tacking on cookies to the request, which so that's the big mystery in your thing, because like why would Amazon serve your images from a dynamic domain that sends all the cookie information alongside the request?
Our domain is not cookieless because we embed Google Analytics into our domain.
No, but like normally Amazon would serve your files. You know the bucket you're talking about. It would come from like static.amazon. Whatever, or static.aws.com, and that would be cookieless. Like that domain would be separate from your own domain, so that when you request an image from that AWS static domain, there's absolutely no cookies whatsoever to be
Right, and that would happen if we set up a second CloudFront distribution, for example, in front of our existing Amplify deployment. But when everything is baked into Amplify, it serves it just from the domain of the website itself, and then that is not cookieless. So that's one of the potential solutions, is just like creating a subdomain that's cookieless and deploying from that. But it seems bizarre to me that they would create this service for with image optimization, which is one of the wonderful things about Next.js. And they don't they don't tell you that it doesn't do this. Like they don't tell you that this is a major flaw in the product. And B, if we go here, people have been complaining about this since September 8th, 2021,
Yeah, no doubt.
right? Like, not quite 2.5 years ago, right? And it has not been fixed. And this guy, who has almost 200,000 followers, made an entire video about this exact problem. Something he discovered not by tracking. I actually use curl. I just sent requests using curl with identical cookie identifiers. But he went to he does this whole thing. He identified because Amplify was actually costing him more money, because your build based on compute, and when it's optimizing every image every single time a request gets made, then you're using a whole lot
So
of
that's your
compute.
answer.
Right,
It's
yeah.
a business model. No.
Right. Maybe. Who knows?
Figured it out.
So yes, there are workarounds you can do. I looked into like making it so that Google Analytics doesn't actually use cookies, using something called local storage. You used to be able to do that with the version we use, GA4. It's much less possible. They've made a more sophisticated version of the analytics cookie or analytics experience, I guess. So yeah, cookieless subdomain is one potential option. Adding a CloudFront distribution in front of our existing distribution is another one. But the other one is that we just not host on Amplify. And if we move off of Amplify, then there are a few different options, because Next.js is very popular. So actually, I don't know if I brought up the correct website. So maybe I'll just Google search for this. SST. .dev. Yeah, that's it. So for hosting Next.js projects, Vercel is going to be your main competitor, and competitor is a weird way to say it, because Vercel actually develops Next.js. It's their project, and it's open source, but they develop it. So they offer hosting for it. It's much more expensive than Amplify is. Like if you host something on Amplify on AWS, normally, and it's a small project, you're going to be paying pennies, maybe dollars a month. Vercel, if you're going to do something commercial, you're starting at $20 per month. And the thing about Vercel is that then if you start using a lot of stuff, if your service scales, or whatever you're doing scales, then like for example, you get a terabyte of bandwidth, but then every extra 100 gigabytes is $40.
Jesus.
Yes, this is very expensive. So like.
And they use AWS in the background.
So that's going to get pretty expensive pretty quickly. So Amplify has its issues because they're like not great at support and like helping you out with some stuff. You have to kind of like jury rig it. Vercel is not great because if you get something big, if you make something large and complicated, it's going to be very expensive. SST is an interesting option. So this is an open source product that basically it's not Amplify. You're still deploying to AWS, but they don't use Amplify at all. What they do, I think we can go to the guide maybe. But what they do is they maybe not. Anyways, they use something called I think CDK. And this is actually a language for essentially spinning up AWS assets. So they you write code that tells AWS exactly what kinds of assets you're going to need for your deployment. And SST essentially lets you do that. It says, okay, you run a few commands, you install SST likely, and then run a few commands and maybe make some minor adjustments to your code. And basically it just like spits out a bunch of AWS resources that are now running your Amplify app, which is your Next.js app, which is kind of a cool thing. I didn't realize that like AWS could be used like this. I think that there's a product like called Terraform that does do something very similar. This is an interesting, I was not aware of this like little corner of web development that is, I think, pretty recent. And it's very neat.
It's pretty crucial in the like back-end world using Terraform and Cloud Development Kit.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Cloud. I didn't even know what this was. So, Jordan, you're just embarrassing.
Not more than Julia.
No, it's really good, and solving this problem really exposed me to a lot of new information, a lot of history, very recent history that I didn't know. So this is a little bit more complicated, like I would say I have my personal website hosted on Amplify, and that works fine because I don't have Google Analytics. I would say that, like we might just switch to Vercel because like they build Next.js, so like 100% they're gonna have everything working like super well all the time, and the site doesn't get a lot of traffic, so it's probably never going to be particularly expensive. If we were building something that we wanted to be large and expandable and something we were going to maintain for a long time, and potentially grow into a very large product, especially something that involved like video streaming or anything data intensive, then I would probably go with SST, which is apparently changing to something called Ion in the near future.
But so there's no final answer on why Amplify doesn't make it better for those assets? Like that video you said, the dude that was writing that video, did he provide some kind of explanation for why this is happening?
just mad.
He's just well, I mean, he doesn't work for
Have you seen
Amplify.
YouTube?
He just complained about it. And he migrated to SST. That's
It
what
makes Amazon money.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Jeff Bezos needs another yacht, and he was like, well,
Such bad design.
I honestly just think that, I think that maybe the Amplify team is just like they have other priorities, like this has been deprioritized, and like, because I mean, the guy has 200,000 subscribers, and he comments on this exact GitHub thread where he's like, hey, this makes it unusable. Yeah, okay. Critical thing that needs to be fixed.
They're like,
I want to,
issue closed due to relevance.
I think a lot of
Dollar signs.
AWS managed services are kind of in that same vein. Like AWS has a managed Airflow. They have some managed databases. They're never as good as if you just spun up your own version that you managed yourself.
Yeah,
Generally, my
Now,
experience.
yeah.
Is there a way that you would save the files that are generated on the fly, like those images, like now you created a thumbnail,
Mhm.
instead of relying on the CDN to cache the thumbnail, could you save that in your bucket? And then Next.js would know like, oh wait, I already have a version, I've already done that job, let me grab and serve that one.
Yeah, I think you can probably just deploy Next.js in a way that doesn't actually use CloudFront. If you were better at, I mean, I could probably do it given a couple days. But I think the downside of that is that then you don't have the advantages that a CDN offers you, which is
Yeah.
like if somebody's a different place and they get the content slower. You're right. I mean, like for our use case, I would much rather that like it just went to the S3 every single time because everybody used querying this from the exact same location essentially, so it's not going to have any impact.
That's mind blowing. Yeah, great discovery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's just-
data egress charges would really add up though, if you just had this one bucket
Yeah,
of all the
yeah.
versions and they didn't go through CDN first.
Yeah. That's a great discovery. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
And
Yeah,
this-
yeah, it was quite frustrating to discover, but I got there eventually. Yeah, and well, and the thing that complicated it was actually that there was a different problem with performance. You know, I'm not going to go into it.
Is that the end?
This is long enough. Yeah. I'm clapping myself.
Did you comment in this thread?
I did. Yeah, my
Where are
comment
you?
was the last one.
Yeah, post a video to this link in this thread.
I can comment too with my French accent. I'll make things a little heavier.
And I put it.
Little-
Let's all
Thing under
go
the sea.
brigade this thread and upload
Yeah.
this guy's comment.
Yeah.
I complained about it in Discord too. And nobody
All
responded.
these, and outrageous.
Baguette.
Could you not,